Have you ever heard about biofield sciences? Are there any connections between the ways your body works, your brain works, and nature, or maybe even the universe? Let me take you on a brief journey through energies, vibrations, brain waves, and natural plant extracts such as essential oils, and how they potentially connect to other things around you, and maybe show you some ways on how to better connect to nature. My name is Wenker. I am a physician, and in the Young Living world, I'm better known as Dr. Ollie. So when we look around us, everything has to do with vibration and frequencies. Right now, there's some wind. Everything is really energy and vibrations. In fact, when you think about it, if you don't look at energy, you're going to miss about 99% of reality. Some very famous people, like Albert Einstein, said in physics, every mass has an equivalent amount of energy, and every energy has an equivalent amount of mass. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And even in quantum physics, which is undergoing very exciting times with the recent findings in Switzerland, which might in fact change the law of physics for the future. But even there, it's all about energy and vibrations and strings and frequencies. And so it is really important to life. Since centuries, we have been looking at biofrequencies, biofields, healing frequencies. Just go back a few thousand years when in China they discovered acupuncture and all the ways the meridian works. We have tables that are going back 4,000 or 5,000 years displaying all the meridians, for example. In other cultures, people looked at chakras, at auras, at maybe looking into a glass bowl, into the future. And in more modern times, people started adding the computing sciences to these old sciences to combine them and align chakras and auras and things like that. So it's not new. So when I go to other physicians and I say, look, we need to look to frequencies, we need to look towards energies, a lot of them just kind of chuckle behind my back. But then I immediately ask, when I see that, could you maybe show me and explain me an electrocardiogram, for example? Yes, a simple electrocardiogram. It's being used in every hospital. It's being used to monitor patients in every operating room, in every ICU of the world. And yet it's a reflection of a frequency. The Dutch physician Eindhoven, over 100 years ago, was able to display for the first time that he could measure frequency of the hearts, not just how many times the heart beats per second, but he could also take the energy from the current, from the frequency of the heart every time the heart beats. And this is what we know today as the electrocardiogram. And another physician in Germany, also about 100 years ago, found that there are in fact brain waves that you can measure. And we call this an EEG, or electroencephalogram. And so this is being used today on a daily basis to figure out your brain waves if you have seizures or things like that. Now, every time you have an electric current going through your body, perpendicular to that electric current, you will have electromagnetic field. And so the question is, since a lot of currents go up and down in our body, how can we measure, or do we even have an electromagnetic field? And several people claim we do. And so let me show you. If you don't believe that, let's just look into modern medical science. Here you're going to see magnetogastrography, or magnetocardiography, or even magnetoencephalography. What that is, it's a measurement of the electromagnetic fields from the outside of the body, looking at what's happening in your gut, for example, with your microbiome, with the vibration of your gut, with your movements of your gut, or to look at what's happening in your heart from the outside, non-invasive, and even to look at some of the stuff that happens in your brain non-invasively. So let's go a little bit to the brain and look at brain waves. So there is different form of main brain waves, and we call them beta, alpha, theta, and delta. So when I'm awake and I'm talking to you right now, I'm firing a bunch of beta brain waves. But when I close my eyes and I'm still active and I'm somewhat creative, my brain will start firing more in the alpha brain waves. And then when I do a deep meditation, deep breathing, and align myself with nature and the earth, then I will go down to theta waves. And theta waves are really, really calming. And then when you go into really deep sleep, where you don't even have dreams, that's when you're in delta waves. So very early on, I started doing research with these brain waves. And here you see a picture of a visitor of ours. It's the Royal Crown Diamond, Connie McDaniel. Thank you very much for being my guinea pig. And I put the band around her head so we could measure her brain waves from the outside. I connected to Bluetooth to my handy, and I could see her brain waves on my handy, and I gave her lavender essential oil to smell, and immediately her brain calmed down. And then I measured her concentration, and I gave her peppermint essential oil to smell, and within about 3 to 5 seconds I immediately started seeing an increase in concentration seen in the yellow line here. In fact, within about 10 seconds I saw an increase in concentration of almost 30%. Very impressive. Then, when I was in Japan on a tour, I came across this aroma routine brain scanner. And what it did, similarly, it would measure your brain waves and then put it on a handy. And that handy was programmed to show you the state of mind you're in. And so here I was smelling a stress away. And again, within about a minute or so, I was able to see on the scan that I was really in a very relaxed state. And that's using the same technology, looking at your brain waves. But then I took this way to the next level. There is something we'll call quantitative electroencephalogram. And what that is, again, it's measuring your EEG, your brain waves, and then assigning colors to these different brain waves in the different parts of the brain. And so in this case, you see, for example, we assigned the color red to more slow brain waves, more the relaxing type of brain waves. And so it's not astonishing when you see lavender or chamomile are the ones that are really slowing you down, so hence the color red. So then I took that a step further, and I put on an entire helmet, and I did an EEG, a medical grade EEG. And then we used the same technology to assign colors to the different parts of the brains. And then I started smelling essential oils. And at the same time, I was able to see on the TV screen, real time, my brain. I could turn it around. I could look at different parts of the brain and different brain waves. And this is what I found. When I was smelling peppermint essential oil, my left frontal brain, that's where you get all the attention into your body, into your brain, this is where it got activated. When I smelled lemon essential oil, I activated my left side temporal lobe, which means I was listening better. You know, this is the area around the ear, and I was better processing language. And then when I smelled lavender, stress away, frankincense, I was able to see that my limbic system, my really old part in the middle of the brain, was calming completely down. I was completely relaxed. And then I took two mixtures, one called Thieves and the other called Digest. And interestingly, my entire brain was lightening up in very, very active brain waves, which tells me that the spices you're going to find in these oil mixtures are really activating to your brain. And so here I'm going to show you a little clip of the live measurements that I did with this kind of technology.
I have a brain cap on. We're going to measure all my brain waves, and we're going to see into the brain, and we're going to smell some essential oils.
Each one of those squares on the picture represents a 5 millimeter voxel of electrical information. Those are your brain waves.
Yeah.
They're measured in cycles per second, or how many times they go up and down in a second. And this is the front part of your brain here. This is the top of the head. And then if we turn here, this is the back. Each one of these green dots represents one of the electrodes on your head.
So the first one I'm going to use is peppermint.
If I'm going to use peppermint oil, I would use it to help me to focus and concentrate, right?
That's right.
So, and when do we normally need to focus and concentrate is when we're going too slow, like brain fog. So let me take this and window it to that theta. Now this here in the frontal lobe is the part of the brain that's in charge of focus and attention.
I'm smelling peppermint now.
So you've got, oh, now this is really interesting, Dr. Ollie. The left side of the brain typically is associated with positive emotions, and the right side of the brain with negative emotions. The left side of the brain is analytical, the right side of the brain is big picture.
And which one are we
thinking.
activating here?
So the left side of your brain is looking like it has more beta than the right side of the brain.
Which means I'm positive.
Positive
at this point. So peppermint makes me active, analytical, and positive.
Interesting.
That's very interesting. So again, I'm going to say this very loud. Peppermint has made me positive and activated my focus and my analytical thinking.
So another question is, do essential oils have frequency? If everything in nature has frequency, you would think essential oils do have frequency. And so a lot of people are saying this is really crazy, this is cuckoo, and other people are completely convinced that they have frequency. So just to put that question at rest, absolutely. If essential oils would not have frequency, they would deny all the laws of physics and all the laws of chemistry. Because when you look, for example, at frankincense essential oils, it's made out of a bunch of natural compounds. And each of these compounds have a natural organic formula, as you see here, for alpha-pinene, for incense-sol acetate, or for beta-boswellic acid or alpha-boswellic acid. All of those are slightly different. And every time these carbon atoms come together or bind another chemical group, that binding is a vibration, is a frequency, is a form of energy. So of course, when you put it all together, it's just very complicated. All these natural extracts, of course, do have frequencies. It's just the question is, how would you measure these frequencies? And that's the big $1 million question. So early on, the researcher Gary Young was fascinated by frequencies and energies, and he worked with that very intensely. And so one day when Gary was not home, I was there with Mary. I asked Mary, could you show me the devices that Gary used, decades ago when he was so fascinated about these frequencies? And she went into the basement and came back up with a big box. And I started unpacking that box and I found a bunch of devices. And it took me a few days to figure out really what they were doing. And then when Gary came back, we had days of discussions of how frequencies involve in nature, involve in plants and in growing plants and things like that. And these devices were not produced in the thousands at the time. And so it's quite interesting that one of these devices had the serial number carved in with a knife in the wood in the back of the device. But what Gary did, he started early on to look at how would frequencies influence maybe the way plants would grow, and hence influence the way the essential oil would turn out, for example. And you need to look at that fantastic book that Mary Young wrote, The Gary Young, the world's leader in essential oils. And you're going to find these pictures here. And you see that Gary early on already made some tests with adding frequencies to the growing plant, to the seedlings, and adding special soil containing probiotics. And you will find that the best growing of plants he found when he added frequency to the growing plant and also some probiotics. We call this functional farming at this point when you add probiotics. So now that we know how important it is for the soil to have the right frequency, for the plants to have the right frequencies, for our bodies to have the right frequencies, how can we connect all these dots together? Is there a way to connect our body, the way our body functions, with the soil, where the plants come out, with the universe? And let me show you how you do that. Our globe, the Earth, is wobbling a little bit when it turns around. And that wobbling creates a frequency, and we call this the Schumann frequency. And when you look at that, it's quite interesting because the Schumann frequency is a frequency of 7.83 hertz. And when you look at the brain wave, that corresponds with theta waves. And theta waves are those waves you're going to see when you are deep in meditation, when you're completely relaxed, and when you're dreaming. And so wouldn't it be really nice if you could align with that frequency and get you quicker into that brain frequency range where you feel completely relaxed? Yes, and you can do that. And this technology is called grounding or earthing. And so people have done this for centuries. They would go barefoot on the soil, on the grass, not on concrete, and they would connect to the earth. And that way they could connect to the Schumann frequency and have that influence the way your body works, including the brain waves. And so when we look at the science, earthing or grounding the human body will influence the human physiology, both during nightly rest and daily activity. In fact, it might be the primary factor in regulating endocrine and the nervous system. That's what some of the authors thought. Now, another study is quite interesting. They took a person that was somewhat stressed and they measured the 24-hour cortisol level, cortisol being the stress hormone. And they found that there were big levels in the morning, as you expect when you wake up and you get ready for the day, but also throughout the days, the cortisol levels were elevated. Then they asked that person to ground, to take off the shoes, take off the socks, and ground with the earth. And after 24 hours, they repeated the blood work. And you can see here how all the cortisol levels came down to absolute normal levels, a little bit higher in the morning than during the day, but absolutely perfectly relaxed. And that shows you how you can influence your body with simple things such as earthing. So when I talked about this grounding to Gary, we always came to talk about black spruce because these very tall trees, he truly believed, were taking the energy of the sky, the northern lights, into the tree and grounded into the soil. And so these trees had a big meaning to him. And I want to show you a quick story here that I recorded for another event, but that will show you how Gary and I had a good experience with black spruce. So Gary, Mary, and their 2 boys and we had the chance of spending about 3 weeks at the essential oil distillery in Northern Lights in Fort Nelson. And it was pretty cold. There was still snow out there. And we were trying to see the northern lights, you know, these beautiful lights in the sky. And we were there for about 2 weeks already and we hadn't seen them. And so we went to bed around midnight. And then at 2 or 3 in the morning, suddenly somebody wakes me up and I'm sleeping in the room with the 2 boys. And suddenly somebody's really shaking me and I'm just getting up in my underwear and I'm just running out and I'm grabbing my little suitcase, my doctor's suitcase, thinking there's a medical emergency. I mean, why would you wake me up at 3 in the morning or so? And Gary's there and he kind of looks at me once I run out of the room and he said, well, you're a little lightly clothed, you know, because it's pretty cold out there. So maybe you want to put some socks on. So I said, okay, so there's no medical emergency. So I went back to the room, put my clothes on and socks and shoes and everything. And I walked out there and Gary said, come with me. And we go outside and oh my God, these beautiful northern lights go on, just this aura. It was just fantastic. And this was again typical Gary. He would just get up at night just to make sure that I could see these northern lights while I was sleeping, and then he would wake me up. So I said, Gary, thank you so much for this beautiful experience. He said, well, we're not done yet. This energy that you see in the sky, it's coming down and it's going into these huge trees that look like lightning rods. And these are black spruce trees in Fort Nelson. And so he said, let's go to the trees. So we walked for about 10 minutes down where the big trees were. And then he turned around and it was pretty bright because the lights from the sky were brightening up the entire forest. And then he turns to me and said, Ollie, let's hug. And I was just thinking, all right, you know, you might be my best friend, but we don't always just hug like in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning or 3:30 in the morning. So I walk up to him and I'm trying just to hug him. And he looks at me and said, no, not me, the trees. And so what we did, we walked over to the big trees and he said, okay, you go on one side, I go on another side. And we hugged the tree and we hold our hands on the other side. And then he kind of looked over and said, Ollie, do you feel it? Do you feel it? And it was just amazing. The energy you could feel like it was coming from the sky into these trees, into the 2 of us. And that just created again another bond that I could not have dreamed of. So to summarize it, if you have good frequencies, you're going to have much better grounding of not just us, but also the plants. You're going to have better roots, hence better plants, hence better essential oils. So know your soil. That way you know your oil. And when we look at the essential oil grounding, which fits to that topic, it's very interesting that you're going to find again the black spruce tree, but some other trees such as white fir, pine trees, cedarwood trees, juniper trees. Again, you will find a flower like ylang ylang and something that grounds you into the ground like angelica root. And Gary used different techniques to blend his oils. He used chemistry, he used physics such as temperature or the state of liquids. He used intuition and gut feeling. He used knowledge, and he used to combine the old knowledge of the ancient people with the more modern knowledge of modern science. One very simple way he also used was to blend 3 different elements. And you see this with the essential oil present time. It's a very simple combination of three elements. One, again, this high tree that takes the energy out of the sky, we call black spruce, combined with a flower, like ylang ylang, combined with a citrus fruit, such as orange in that case. And so this is a really simple way of creating an oil. And I would like to challenge you to go and look at different blends, such as highest potential, gathering, brain power, higher unity, or white angelica, or any other blend, and see if you can recognize some patterns of big trees, some flowers, and maybe some citrus fruits. And you're going to see very often the trees used are black spruce, in fact, or white fir, trees like that. The flowers very often ylang ylang or geranium, or then the citrus fruit, either lemon, lime, or orange. So the last thing I want to talk about is to align your body maybe with sound, because sound, again, is a frequency, and everything here in nature is sound, like the wind, the waves here behind me on the lake. These are all frequencies. But here in this picture, you see different techniques on how sound has been used throughout centuries to align with the body. And in the first picture, you see Tamara Packer, who is treating me with a sound bowl from Japan. Then you also know the vibrational tuning forks, the sound of bowls, or the sound of singing like Om or Gregorian chants. All of those are intended to get you in tune with your body and with your brain frequencies. And it's interesting that we have one member in Young Living in Australia, and she creates music and songs inspired by essential oils. I want to show you a brief clip of what she's able to create with her singing and with the sounds when she smells essential oils. So how do we smell oils? Well, we smell them through the nose. We have olfactory receptors, smell receptors, and that way these smells and odors and scents go into our brain. But did you know that, for example, we have the same olfactory receptor, these smell receptors we have in the nose, we have them all over our body on the skin. Yes, our skins can smell. Even you do not smell the oil through your nose. And in fact, this is even much bigger than we ever thought. We find them in the heart, in the brain, in the nerves, in the kidneys, in the muscles, in the prostate, in the gut, everywhere. So is there a way that we really didn't think about it in medical sciences, the way our body communicates through smells and odors? Is that really possible? And that leads to the next questions. Do scents, odors, and smells really do have vibrations? Well, I told you essential oils must have vibrations, otherwise the law of physics and chemistry would be wrong. Well, that means that these smells do have some component of vibration. We know from studies on the fruit flies that they smell an odor by looking at the vibration or by feeling the vibration of that odor. And now we were able to show in humans that there is a vibrational component in human smelling. Is there still a whole system to be discovered we haven't really looked at yet? I mean, are we at the top of our knowledge? Probably not. There's much more to smells, the body, the vibrations, the energy, everything I talked about today. And so I think we have still a ways to go, and this is where Gary was really thinking. He was thinking way ahead to see how he connect the dots by all these different findings. And even if we do this virtual convention now, where literally hundreds of thousands of people are connected to the same lectures in the same second of the day, it would be nice if you would all be smelling the same essential oils. I think there's an energy that goes around the globe that way. And if we do 4 times a year our Young Living Day, and again, hundreds of thousands of people are connecting to each other the same day, having the same thoughts about essential oils, I think there's a much bigger global picture of connectivity here when we connect our energies. So I would like to conclude this lecture by showing you a little bit the bigger picture. This is what Gary was doing all the time. He would look at chemistry, he would look at physics, he would look at natures all the time. He would look at spirituality, because for him, nature was God's living room. So if he wanted to be close to God, he would go on his horse, go up the mountain and be in God's living room and directly talk to God. But he also looked at it with a lot of common sense. And when Gary came from the old knowledge, from the knowledge that is hundreds of years old, and I came with the new knowledge that is in modern medicine and modern science, this is where we connected so well, and we were able to combine those. And all of this combined comes together as the knowing, something that was really important to Gary, the knowing, the certainty that things really do work out and that these things are all connected in nature. And with that, I hope I was able to pass on a little bit of that knowing to you, and I wish you a great virtual International Grand Convention. This is Dr. Ali, and you have a great day.